Howdy. So today I've been thinking a little bit about Jung's shadow. I don't know if you've kind of come across this Carl Jung, the celebrated psychoanalyst and psychiatrist. Now, briefly, I don't actually hold a huge amount of truck with psychoanalysis. I'm not a massive fan of Freud. I found him a bit of a fraud. Essentially, he could explain anything away with some kind of deep repression and blame everything on your parents, whereas I hold a much more kind of active and proactive view to sort of self-helpy type stuff, so more like CBT, which is based in kind of Stoic philosophy. But I think Carl Jung's shadow self, the investigation of these kind of repressed or feelings that we deny or we think are unacceptable about ourselves, is a really healthy and strong thing to do. So I thought we'd just talk about that briefly today. So Jung had this sense that we tended to take any negative feelings and we seem to repress them or unconsciously suppress them or deny that we have them or refuse any acceptability for things like not just kind of darker feelings of kind of rage and greed and lust and kind of things like that we kind of know or kind of nasty emotions, but also other things like what he called repressed potential. So that could be a societal thing, where perhaps being courageous or being vocal or being seen or having assertiveness or a level of creativity might in your social or your cultural environment be something that you feel you need to repress. So we've got these dark traits that we all know of. The 7 deadly sins are a good example. But then we've got these kind of socially and kind of culturally suppressed things that we have within us. So the interesting thing that Jung kind of observed with these shadow elements of our psyche was that one of the things that happened is what we actually tend to do is that repression becomes projection. So what we tend to do is those things that we carry around with us, we actually project onto other people. So for example, somebody who is particularly critical of themselves and don't feel they're good enough and are highly kind of judgmental of their own things, subconsciously of themselves, tend to actually project that on others. You get your micromanagers who critique and are very critical about other people's work, or perhaps somebody who is a bit of a gossip and tends to be very judgmental about other people. That is possibly a repressed shadow element of their own psyche. And another element that Jung kind of strove for really is this idea that we should have or attempt to achieve wholeness rather than goodness. Societally, we're all supposed to be amazing people, right? We're supposed to be happy and positive and all these things. You can only have the white bits of the yin yang, but essentially everything on the planet has balance, and we all know that isn't true. But culturally, that's what we strive to be, perfect and happy and right down that end of the spectrum. But what Jung was saying was that we need to acknowledge the shadow self to be able to really be whole. You can't have one without the other. So he was talking about striving for wholeness over goodness, because ultimately, a bit like perfection, goodness, pure goodness, doesn't really exist. So whilst everybody has this shadow self, sometimes it's unconscious and comes out as a projection. But what we can do, if we're really observant and we're really honest with ourselves, and this is where I think it becomes interesting, if we can observe this shadow self of ourselves and acknowledge its existence and kind of take some responsibility and a bit of accountability and honesty for it, can actually be a force for good. It's not necessarily that we need to kind of try and eradicate it. It's more that we just need to acknowledge its existence and do something with it. So I've actually sat down and done this, and I've written a very honest, very kind of personal list of all the kind of personality traits that I know are within my psyche. And it took a lot of honesty and a lot of courage to kind of do this. But the point is that just the very act of acknowledging it and taking responsibility for it changes its perspective. It stops it being repressed or kind of being unconscious and brings it into the conscious self, which I think is primarily a very important thing to be able to do. But it's been a massive force for kind of creativity, investigating those things. That's why I feel like that. That's why I treated that person that way. And so as a result of that, it's been a very kind of positive experience. My own take on kind of psychoanalysis and this kind of idea that everything is kind of, nothing's your fault really. I think that's part of my problem with psychoanalysis. But I'm much more a fan of kind of CBT stuff, which is more proactive. It's more of an analysis thing where you actually kind of identify what the problem is and put some positive things into place. So whilst I'm not a massive fan of psychoanalysis, I'm a big fan of kind of Jung's shadow work, and it's something that I would suggest all of you take a bit of time to investigate. That's where my head's been at today. Hope you've had a good Tuesday. It's been full on and my dinner's ready. Goodbye.